Yes, the Houston Texans. Another season of 10-7 and making the postseason and winning a playoff game and dominating a playoff game. Really, they dominated both Cleveland and the Chargers the past two seasons, and then they get into that divisional round and they're on the road. They're facing one of the best teams in the league, and the Ravens and the Chiefs the past 2 years, and they were unable to get it done. So a big question coming to this season is, for me at least, is this a Texans season where are we going to be okay with the same results? Are we going to be okay with making the postseason, winning the division, winning a playoff game again? Or would we like to see C.J. Stroud take the next step? They were heavy into the offseason last year. They made very aggressive moves, bringing in Stephon Diggs, bringing in Joe Mixon. They tried to add weapons with C.J. Stroud. And unfortunately for them, it was a season of brutal injuries. Stephon Diggs tore his ACL. Tank Dell broke his leg. Joe Mixon had bad injuries throughout the season. And the offense was basically, it became C.J. Stroud and Nico Collins at one point, and they were still piecing people up a little bit because Nico is really that good, and C.J. Stroud has been that good. They've got a new offensive coordinator this season, and Nick Cali. He comes from the Los Angeles Rams. He was their passing game coordinator. So the question will be, does he have the skills to make this offense dynamic again? I guess my first question to y'all is, what are y'all's expectations for the Texans? Is the season a failure if it's anything less than the last two?
Go ahead. You got it.
It's definitely a failure if it's less than the last two.
Even if it's winning the division and losing that first game?
I would be disappointed as a Texans fan if I win the division and lose the first game, just because with the way I view their division and how weak it is in my eyes, there's no excuse not to win. Like, it doesn't really feel like much of an accomplishment to win. You're not really going out there and beating other strong teams in your division. So they're really going to be measured by postseason success. If they go and drop that first game, yeah, it's going to feel like another disappointment.
Yeah, I would say I think they can win the division and go 10-7 again, and then depending on their draw in the postseason, if they get like a Chargers team in that first round or a hard wild card matchup that didn't win the division, losing it might not be the end all be all. I also think that they could go 10-7 and see a step forward from C.J. Stroud, but because Tank Dell is out for the season and because they lost Stephon Diggs, who while Stephon Diggs was not elite last year, but as a third string wide receiver, like that's a good third guy to have. They lose Stephon Diggs, and so now they're trotting out a wide receiver room of Jaden Higgins, a rookie, and then Christian Kirk, who they traded for from Jacksonville.
Who's coming off an injury, big
Correct.
injury. He missed 10 games.
Aggie on Aggie crime last year, actually.
Yeah. So I think if you see C.J. Stroud play more like he did his rookie year, kind of get back there. He threw 13 interceptions this year, 5 his rookie year. He threw less touchdowns this last year. It was just a weird step back. So you really want to see the new offensive coordinator get C.J. Stroud back on track to being the top 5 quarterback. We all thought, like, oh, rookie year C.J. Stroud, like this guy's going to be like a top 5 quarterback in 2 years. And now it's like, well, what just happened? So if the new OC comes in and kind of corrects things and they get to 10-7 and then unfortunately like get matched up in a pretty tough AFC, like with a tough wild card, I don't think it's the end of the world.
Yeah, the big reason for the step back last season was the offensive line play. They were terrible. C.J. Stroud was just absolutely destroyed. Stroud was sacked 52 times last season, second most in the league behind Caleb Williams, who was sacked 68 times, which is insane in its own. But yeah, the offensive line was brutal, and then they make an interesting move in trading Laramie Tunsil to the Commanders this offseason. They bring in two offensive tackles that have started tons of games, and more than likely, one of them is for sure starting, but two I would expect to start. Trent Brown, who played for the old Patriots teams but was with the Bengals last season. The dude's 6'8", 370, so he just takes up a lot of space. And then Cam Robinson, who the Jaguars traded to the Vikings midseason when Christian Darrisaw got hurt, and then now he is joining the Texans this season. Cam Robinson didn't have a good season from a PFF grade perspective, but he's still viewed as one of the better left tackles in the league, and they paid him enough to be a starting left tackle this coming season. They made some additions offensively to try to counteract the lack of depth they had due to injuries last season. They add Christian Kirk, obviously. They spent 2 of their first 3 draft picks on the Iowa State duo and Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. Braxton Berrios joins the team. Justin Watson from the Chiefs joins the team. I think it's going to be an interesting question from a fantasy football perspective. Who is like wide receiver 2 for the Texans? Because C.J. Stroud's a good enough quarterback that like that receiver is going to get touches.
Yeah.
So for y'all, if y'all had to predict right now, who do you guys see as like wide receiver 2? If you were your fantasy football, Nico Collins is off the board. Who's the second Texan being taken?
I like Jaden Higgins a lot. Some of the podcasts I listened to had him as like wide receiver, I guess 3 or 4 in this last draft class, and the fact they were able to get him in the second round.
Yes.
When in previous draft classes you just weren't getting a good wide receiver that low, I like a lot. I've also heard people say that like he's a raw guy, but as far as wide receiver, NFL wide receiver potential goes, he has like the ability to be a wide receiver 1 at the NFL level. So I like Higgins a lot. It'll be interesting to see how he develops his first year with the Texans. But like you said, they're bringing in the Rams coordinator or assistant coordinator who just worked with Puka Nacua, who was a 5th-round draft pick, and he just took the league by storm his rookie year 2 years ago. So I like Higgins a lot.
Yeah, I'd go Christian Kirk.
That's crazy.
There's potentially a little bias there. He went to Texas A&M, Giga Maggies, but I know that his time in Jacksonville wasn't as good as he hoped, I guess, especially considering the contract he got. They gave him a good chunk of money to go play there, but it wasn't like the Jaguars were dominating in general during that stretch. It just kind of wasn't the best situation, and so I think here's an opportunity to kind of turn things around, assuming he gets healthy. He's playing with a great QB that can get him touches. So I'd go Christian Kirk.
Yeah, my question for Christian Kirk is he's still going to be the deep threat that he has notoriously been, coming off another long, hurtful lower body injury. And so for me, Christian Kirk has the chance to be it. I think it's going to be a committee. I really think it's going to interchange every single week. I think it's going to feel like the Packers and the receivers, except you do have the 1A and Nico Collins. But I think anyone could be getting the touches every single week, which I think will make it a very interesting team to watch from a fantasy football perspective. A lot of eyes are going to be on Texans games because of that, I feel like. Because all of these receivers, I think, are capable. Like, even when you get into a 16-team league, like, I think guys like Braxton Berrios or even Justin Watson are guys that could catch a touchdown every couple weeks. And, that makes a difference in a 16-team league between a win and a loss, whether or not Justin Watson gets a touchdown for you. I think before we get into the defensive side of the ball, my last question was, and it's a weird one, and no Texans preview is going to talk about this, not even Texan fan bases, but I'm curious y'all's thoughts on, because we're a Mississippi State show and we like the SEC and we've seen a ton of SEC ball, who do we think the backup quarterback is going to be? Graham Mertz was brought in, and he was drafted in the 6th round from Florida. But Davis Mills was re-signed to a 1-year, $5 million contract this offseason, and these are his stats flashed up there. While the record isn't good, there are some positives a little bit. He can kind of play football a little bit. He is, again, the reason they got C.J. Stroud in the first place, completing the Hail Mary to beat the Colts, which moved the Texans to the 2nd overall pick instead of the 1st. And instead of ending up with a guy they like and Bryce Young, they ended up with a guy they love and C.J. Stroud. So my question to y'all is, do we think Graham Mertz has a chance to take the backup quarterback role? Because, and I bring this up more importantly, because Stroud was sacked 52 times last season. He was sacked a ton his rookie year. And that's going to eventually, I feel like he's going to get hit in a way where he loses a game or 2 or 3. And you think of like last season, think about like the Packers. Jordan Love gets hurt week 1. Malik Willis has to come in, and Malik Willis wins some big games. And for the Texans and the AFC, and the division is weak, but you drop 2 or 3 games you're not supposed to, especially if they drop them to division opponents like in week 3 and 4 to Jacksonville and Tennessee. That could be the difference in winning the division or not. And winning the division is basically the only way to make the playoffs in this division. So where do y'all think that kind of goes?
I think it'll be Mills. There's a reason. Here, I'll put the graphic back up. There's a reason they gave him a chance as the starting quarterback in 2023. He was not on a very good roster in 2022. I had my years wrong. He was not on a good roster in 2021, and he still threw 16 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. And so it was one of those guys. I'm trying to think of an example. I feel like there was a Broncos example. Was it?
You thinking of Brock Osweiler?
It might have been Osweiler. Where was he drafted? Like in what round? Do you remember?
He was drafted in the first round.
Were him and Lynch both first round picks?
I believe so.
Oh, I did not.
I don't think Osweiler wasn't drafted by the Broncos, if I'm not mistaken.
You give your answer because now I'm curious.
I would go Mills. I like Mills about as much as you can like a backup quarterback. He's someone that I think at least gives you a chance to win if he's in the pocket. I know the record doesn't necessarily show that, but he's flashed and kind of shown that he can at least handle an NFL offense. So I'd go him. I'm just also Graham Mertz in the 6th round. I've seen a good bit of Graham Mertz at Florida, like you said, even when he was playing at Wisconsin before Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Just, inconsistent. Just nothing really stood out to me that was like, this guy could make it in the NFL. So,
yeah, and Sven kind of agrees. He says that Mertz needs to sit for a year. He was not great at sliding and took some big hits in college. And the reality is that, like, even in the SEC, the NFL is going to be a step up as far as the physicality goes. So if I don't remember, was Mertz a pretty run-heavy quarterback? Took some big hits?
Yeah, he definitely would put himself in spots. He got hurt both of these past 2 seasons. And, yeah, like he would put his body in spots that he didn't necessarily should have. The season that it felt like they could potentially do something with it. The one season he started, that he gets hurt and hurt his shoulder and was basically out for the rest of the year, and that kind of hurt them a ton. So I do see some agreeance there. I think my biggest, I feel like I'd push for Graham Mertz, and I think he's got a chance, is because Davis Mills doesn't win games. And, yes, that was a previous coaching staff and a previous Texans organization, but at the end of the day, quarterbacks in the NFL, even if the organization is bad, some are just winners, and that's the kind of thing you're looking for in a backup. Otherwise, you're looking for the coach to just be so outstanding that he puts their guys in spots to win. But 5-19 is not good enough, I think. I think that basically guarantees you go 1-2 in a 3-game span if you were to miss C.J. Stroud. And I think that is a high possibility because, yes, they brought in Cam Robinson, Trent Brown, and even drafted an offensive tackle in the 3rd round. The offensive line is still going to be a huge question mark for Houston this season. And with an offense that's wanting to throw the ball as much as they will, it'll be that, it's going to be tested. It's going to be tested a ton because otherwise they're relying on Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb to be this 2-headed monster. And the offensive line still isn't quite good enough to even help that, come to fruition. The reason Lions are so good at running the damn football is because the offensive line is so good. So that makes David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs even better than they actually are, because the holes are there, and then they can make people miss or run people over. So that's where offensive line is it's such a big question on the offensive side of the ball. If you can bring up their graphic for their offensive defense last season, because that'll lead into what I want to talk about next, which is their offense and their defense. The defense was outstanding last year, top 10 in points per game, but top 3 in 3 very big categories. Yards per game, they were 2nd. 3rd down conversion percentage, they were 3rd. And then sack percentage, they were amazing. And specifically, Will Anderson Jr. was great. Danielle Hunter was great. If you want to throw up Will Anderson Jr., remember 2 years ago, they make the big move on draft night. They trade, after C.J. Stroud is drafted, they trade up to the 3rd overall pick to select Will Anderson Jr. The Cardinals traded back to revisit that trade. The Texans got Will Anderson Jr., who's been amazing for them. Big W. Cardinals got Paris Johnson Jr., who's a franchise left tackle, Garrett Williams, who actually was the 6th ranked quarterback or cornerback in PFF last season, so he's been really good. Michael Wilson has been a key piece for them. In that trade, they got the 33rd pick, which they traded to the Titans, which became Will Levis. Shout out Harris, but that's why they've got like 6 players instead of just 2 or 3. And then they also got the 1st and 2nd in the following year's draft, which is Darius Robinson and Elijah Jones, who did not play basically at all last season, either of them. So there's still questions if Houston won that trade or not. But it paid off for them. Will Anderson has been elite. He was a weapon last season, especially with 11 sacks. And while the PFF grade was worse, he was a monster on the defensive line. On the opposite side of Daniil Hunter, it really made this defense really go. Derek Stingley was one of the best players in football last season. And it's kind of like no argument that he was like the most impactful player on that team. If you want to, like, Football Reference does a stat that's essentially, I think of it like WAR in baseball. And Derek Stingley was at the top of the list. It's average value or whatever it is, what they call it. And Derek Stingley was at the top of the list for Houston last season. He returns again this season. The defense, I think they're going to be really good again. D'Amico Ryans has done a great job in 2 years as the head coach and then calling the defense and really being the leader of this pack and giving them an identity. They don't really address it in the offseason. The only addition they brought in was C.J. Gardner-Johnson, which for me, him being a former Saint and a former of many teams now at this point, that almost brings in more questions than it does answers. It feels like for an NBA comparison, it's like bringing in Lance Stevenson just after his Pacers runs, because it was just like, yeah, he can contribute in ways, but he's going to more so pick fights than he is, make good football plays. And you can argue whether or not you think he's good or not. That's really their only addition defensively. So the defense has to produce again at the same level that they did next year for this to be a viable team, especially in the AFC. Like, the defense needs to be great. Think of all the quarterbacks in the AFC. Think of the run the Texans are going to have to go down if they're going to get over the hump that we talked about at the beginning of this. If they're going to win multiple playoff games, they have to beat Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and Mahomes and Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert, I guess, if people think he's good, even though they kicked his ass last year in the playoffs. Defense is going to have to be good again. Do you guys expect the defense to be good again? Is Will Anderson Jr. going to be the best defensive line edge this season
in football?
No.
But I mean,
it's an interesting
he's
question.
playing at the same time as Myles Garrett and T.J. Watt.
Yeah, and Aiden Hutchinson and Nick Bosa, and there's a ton of
I just went to the two.
There's a ton of weapons. Is he top 5?
Is there a lane where that could happen?
I'm interested.
I think
because it's year 3.
There's a lane where
and
he's
improved
top 5
each year.
Yeah.
I
thought you just said he got worse his second year.
PFF grade,
Yeah.
but he had 4 more sacks.
I mean,
Yeah.
Sven is right. PFF is a bunch of hokey.
Before I answer that question, I am going to address Sven. Sven said
Because-
PFF is not a site where someone should look at how good a guy is. They have some weird stats going on over there. And I'm just going to speak PFF. They clown on PFF, and I really love PFF.
Glazes.
And
Glazes is the right
I glaze PFF, and I push it out there, and I use it all the time. And I think it's good because it means that I think it's good that not all 3 of us is one way or the other. The reason I like PFF is because of they look at every play, and they look at not just the result, but what the player did. And so they are rewarding tackles. If a tackle gives up a sack, but it's because the QB ran outside the pocket and put the tackle in a bad position, they're not punishing that tackle. And so they're not just outcome-based stats. They are looking more at what decisions those players made and how those decisions were executed. Like, if you look at the Penix, the two of 3 Michael Penix interceptions last season were not like PFF would have graded those positively because they were fantastic throws, and then the wide receiver just turns around and just it's like he's holding a stick of butter and it just pops out. And so that's why I love PFF, is because it's not outcome-based stats. It is like action-based stats. So that's why I love PFF. And I do agree that I'm trying to not rely on it and use it as a crutch entirely, but I do really like PFF. Now I will answer. That is a great point, Sven, is you can't just focus on that. And there are things that you need to look at outside of it, but also it teaches you interesting things that you do need to look at. Like we're going to talk about later with Jalen Walker. I've got some interesting thoughts on Jalen Walker and his PFF grade versus his stat output. We'll get to that in our Jags preview. Trayvon Walker. What did I say? Jalen Walker?
Jalen Walker.
The other Georgia linebacker or edge who was just drafted.
Yeah.
My apologies.
You're good.
Trayvon Walker. We'll talk about him in the Jags. JP, can you repeat your question? Because I got locked into answering Sven.
My question was, do you think Will Anderson has the potential to be a top 5 pass rusher in the league because he has improved his sack numbers over 2 seasons? And year 3, can he make a big jump? Can he? He'll be very motivated this season because this is a big year for him. If he plays really well, they're more than likely going to pick up the 5th-year option right now. But he basically would secure the 5th-year option, and he could play kind of mid in the 4th year and get the big extension.
Yeah.
And for him, that's life-changing money, especially pass rushers being the second highest paid position in the NFL. I think it's an extremely motivating year for him. So I'm curious if you guys see it as a possibility of him being even top 5, and I threw out there jokingly the best in the league.
Yeah. Top 5, I could see a lane. He is a dog. He's kind of one of the guys coming out from Bama where there's just almost no question that he was just going to be a force in this league. I could see a world, but it's just one of the most talented positions in football right now. So it's a hard list to crack the top 5 in. Because it would be Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, give me another name.
Aiden
Hutchinson.
Nick Bosa. Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah. He could.
I don't think there's a path for him to be number 1. Just because that would mean you're getting down years from. Sorry, I wasn't listening. You may have just said this because I was trying to look something up. But for him to be 1, you'd have to have down years from 5 guys all at the same time.
Let's say, can he lead the league in sacks this season?
Yes.
He had 11, 5 behind Trey Henderson, 16. Can he get up to 14, 15?
That's not going to be enough to lead the league.
It could.
Hendrickson was at 16 and a half or whatever and led the league. So
was it really?
I believe so. If it was 18 and a half, I'm poorly mistaken. But it's still, the math would say, and I'm a big math guy, 7 sacks the first year, 11 the second.
You're looking at 15.
He's due for at least 15. And you could say there's some compound in that where it's actually he's due for 8 more. So he's due for 19 sacks this season.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, and then defense as a whole, I don't really see any reason why they can't repeat their defense from last year, or at least close to. Really, you don't have to be like a top 3 defense across multiple metrics. If you can even just stay top 10 and get the offensive side figured out, then you're in a good spot.
Yeah. It was around there, so I just pulled it up on PFF, and they do full sacks. They don't do half sacks because they don't believe in half sacks. So they've got Hendrickson at 18 and then Anderson at 16.
So that means
there's a possibility that he
if
could
2 people sack one, they both get a whole sack?
Yeah.
He had 17 and a half.
Because if 2 people if 2 people got there, then one person not being there, the other person still would have gotten the sack. They're still awarding a sack to that person. So, yeah. I don't see him being the best edge rusher. I guess I do see a world where he leads the league in sacks, but I just think that given the dominance we've seen from Myles Garrett and TJ Watt, and then last season with Aiden Hutchinson, if he comes back from injury at 100%, which I kind of expect given that there was a chance he could have played in the Super Bowl, however small, now that he's got a full offseason of recovery, I really think he'll be back, at least fully healthy. Maybe not in the same form, but...
Well, Myles Garrett will take a step back because he just got his money, and he plays for the Browns, so he can tap out a little bit.
Also, Sven, QBR is not a PFF metric. That's an unrelated. That's just I don't know who invented QBR, but QB rating is not a PFF metric. PFF actually has Arch Manning with a 70 grade against Florida, which was his 4th highest grade that season. He had an 87.
We can't be talking about Arch Manning in Texas, okay?
I'm sorry. Sven is
nasty.
Sven is
nasty.
saying that QBR.
We're talking about the Texans. The Texans.
QBR is also different than passer rating, which is not confusing whatsoever.
Yeah.
I don't get it either.
With all that, we think the defense is going to be good again next year. I expect them to be great next year.
Did you say that Derek Stingley was the best player on that defense last year?
Pro Football Reference has Derek Stingley as the best player on the team last year from a stat they call AV. I think it's average value or something.
Okay. Is it similar to like WAR?
It's
Probably?
that's
Yeah,
what
that's
I
what he
would
equated
describe
it
it
to.
as.
Yeah.
Is like
Was it
WAR
in like
baseball.
what was the? Do you remember the units?
Or like win
I
shares.
don't remember what the unit. You can Pro Football Reference.
Yeah.
Just literally look up Houston Texans on PFF, or not PFF. Pro Football. PFR, that would be
Pro Football. Yeah.
Pro Football Reference.
This is another
if
very.
you-
I
yeah,
do like this
You
website.
just scroll down to their season history, and you can see Stingley. It's right there. It was right there, at the top. Stingley is their
Okay.
highest
AV
rated.
is our attempt to attach a single number to a single player to every player.
Yeah, it's
14 AV.
essentially their version of WAR.
Yeah.
But
Or
he's not.
box plus minus. Like
Yeah,
if you
he's
wanna
not.
go
He's not
basketball.
14 wins above replacement. It doesn't mean the same thing, but that's what their version of the stat is.
Yeah.
Which
Cool.
I'm sure helps Sven with the PFF stuff. Like, there's another avenue of stats. Regardless, we think the defense is going to be good.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be pretty great. Let's get into how we feel like their season's going to play out. Both of you guys have them going 11-6, and I have them going 10-7 once again. I think there's going to be there's a lot of big games on this schedule this season. They play a lot of important games. They'll be in the spotlight 4 times in prime time, but they also have big weekend games, like to open the season at Los Angeles. The Rams is a big game. Baltimore on the road in week 5 is a big game. Hosting San Francisco and hosting Bo Nix, those are both really big games. Hosting Geno Smith to Sanders is a huge game. It's one of the best games of the year. They also have to go back to LA again to play the Chargers towards the end of the year, which is a big potential playoff seeding game. I have them going 10-7. I have them losing a few games that it feels like they shouldn't. Like, I have them losing to the Indianapolis Colts the last week of the season. For me, that's a loss because they've already won the division and they have no reason to play hard in that game. That's why that prediction.
Unless
is there.
seeding comes into play. They need to hold on.
Yeah, if seeding comes into play, then they'll probably play and win that game. I also have them losing to Jacksonville about midway through the season, which they almost lost last year, I might add, even with the dumpster fire that was the Jaguars last year. I have them losing to Buffalo. I have them losing to Baltimore. We basically all do in that category. Now, Jack and I both have them winning at Kansas City. I do think that's going to be – I mean, it's going to be a big game that's on Sunday Night Football. So that would be a huge win for their kind of mojo for the season.
Facts.
Are there any, like, big spots for you guys that, like, kind of stick out for you for this season for the Texans? A big one for me, if I had to call one myself, is they have 3 straight weeks at home with San Francisco, Denver, and Jacksonville. And then right after that, they play on the road 3 out of 4 weeks, and 2 of those games on prime time. Like, that's a really interesting 7-week stretch for the Texans. With the early bye, it could get interesting. Injuries, like, there's not a week in there for injuries to heal up besides really 8, 9, and 10 where you're at home for 3 straight weeks. What kind of sticks out to y'all from a scheduling perspective for the Texans this season?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, the big thing to me was, you already mentioned it, but having to go to Baltimore and to Kansas City are 2 very tough road games. Obviously, you do get Buffalo at home, but even just having to play those 3 teams right there, because I guess they were the 1 seed last year, so, like, you have to. But it's weird because they don't feel like they're in the same class as those teams. Mm-hmm. All those feel like the heavyweights, and Texas feels almost like the imposter of the division winners. So, to me, it feels tough to have to play those 3.
Yeah.
So
Buffalo would be my big game just because it's a home game. You've got the other 2 on the road. If you can win that game, all of a sudden you could lose those other 2 and win that game and still be in a spot to potentially get the 1 seed. I mean, that would require winning the majority of your other games, but if you can win one of those 1 seed games, that could be helpful as far as seeding goes. And even at the 1 seed, at least you're looking at a 2 seed, which is help. I think the AFC is a pretty stacked conference this year, and so getting higher and higher up those division winner seeds means you're going to play a worse and worse wild card game. So even if you can't get the bye, playing a worse wild card game is always beneficial. So
yeah, I think it'd be pivotal for that because that is the reason they lost really in the second round the past two postseasons was because they were the fourth best division winner. They played a good team in the first week, but then they played the number one seed off a bye in their place in Kansas City and the Baltimore Ravens, and that just didn't play well to their advantage. So I think climbing the ladder is going to be big, and they have the opportunities to do that. They have the tiebreakers there available, getting to play Buffalo, Kansas City, Baltimore, the Chargers, Denver, all these teams that are supposed to be near the top in the AFC this season. They get to play them. They're going to have a chance to own those tiebreakers. So that for me, those are huge games they got to take advantage of this season. But yeah, I have them again going 10-7. Our fan, which I don't know who our fan is.
Yeah, I can step in for this because it's my brother-in-law Ryan.
Oh, okay, cool.
Him and his dad, I guess, joint made it. He's very high, which is not too surprising because he is a Texans fan, but he's not a diehard NFL guy. And they like to stay on the side of optimism. So I mean, he basically has them losing their 4 hardest games.
Yep.
But then winning everything else.
For me, that doesn't feel like as that being that high then, because if you don't feel like you can beat the 4 best teams in the AFC,
that's fair.
What is winning 13
But it's like
games
football is a league of parity, so like
Sure.
not losing, like they're not this. He didn't have them losing a single game they'd be favored in.
But it does kind of make sense. I kind of like it because he's got them so they win their first 4 games and they lose a hard game and then they go in a bye, and they come out of the bye and then
Hot.
they come out of the bye hot off of the rest. They win 5 straight games, and the schedule kind of favors that because the 2 of the 5 hardest games, San Francisco and Denver, both at home. So you say, all right, home game, you're rested, you win those. Seattle and Tennessee are both going to be easier probably, but they're on the road, you win those.
Monday Night Football in Seattle is no cakewalk.
But they are coming, like I said, off the bye week.
Sure.
Like,
But to me, I know. I mean, I don't understand how you'll feel about Denver, but like to beat at Seattle and then beat San Francisco and Denver 3 in a row, that'd be that would be like, okay, like I'm watching now.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't see that happening.
If the
personally.
schedule were to allow that, and then you get 6 weeks removed from the bye week, and then you start to lose almost every other game as you run out of steam towards the end of the season.
Sure.
The schedule does shape up to where 13-4, like this is like a very feasible scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I call it optimistic. I don't just think it's unrealistic, right? I think it's
Yeah.
He didn't go and he's not going 15-2, 17-0.
Yeah.
But he's definitely on the higher side. I mean, they're over under. Do you know what their win total is on the season?
I do not.
I don't have it readily.
I'll pull it up. Y'all talk.
My guess it would be 9.5.
That's where I was at. So.
I think the early bye is going to hurt them a ton come February because weeks.
Yeah. Good
Weeks,
stuff.
yeah, I know ball. No, I'm also just a semi-professional gambler, so it's all up there.
Is everyone a semi-professional gambler though? If there's money involved, 'Cause
No,
you can't do it amateurly.
You have to have made money.
Okay.
Oh, then I'm also semi-professional.
Okay, sure. If you
And
want to
you
make
are
that
too.
claim,
You are too.
Technically, no, because I've never put my own money at stake, so I don't feel like I can claim that.
Well, you've been involved in the parlay.
I'm yeah, but I didn't I don't think that counts.
It also doesn't count because you didn't put any thought to it. You just clicked randomly.
No, I did put a little thought into it. We just went quick.
Okay. Continue, Chief.
yeah, I think the early bye is going to hurt them a ton.
Yeah.
Sure.
9.5 is a great line too. That's really hard to bet. I would assume they're favored to win over 9.5 would be my guess, and I feel like they deserve that right.
They are not.
They're
Sorry,
under,
that's the under is -120.
the under.
The over is +100. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, so
They are
they're
favored.
50-50 on going over 9.5 is what
Yeah.
that means. Yeah, the early bye I think is going to hurt them a ton because they're going to then have to play literally 12 games in a row,
Yeah.
and then go play the postseason game, which would then mean you have to play 3 more games in a row. Because assuming they're not the 1 seed, that's 15 weeks in a row.
It's tough.
Then you finally get the bye and go play in the Super Bowl. And then, but my biggest issue with that is 12 weeks in a row, you play each of the teams that you would more than likely play in the postseason, meaning they get to see you in this version of you and they get to feel you, which I think is a big thing for teams, especially in the NFL, like getting to see the speed and getting to to feel how Nick Chubb is hitting you right now, and how Will Anderson is looking out there on the perimeter. Like, I think that's key for Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, Herbert and Harbaugh. And then on top of it, you're 12 straight weeks of playing football, and then you have to go beat them.
Yeah.
I think it's going to hurt them. So for me, like, I think the Texans literally have the same year again, but I think they're more than likely they lose the first playoff game than they do win it. But again, it depends on matchup there.
I mean, if you look at the podcast picks, that you got to smash the over, because we have them going 13-4 too, because of the way it lines up, where we alternate where our losses are, and so you think we're going to get to the Ravens and have them going 17-0?
Well, we already did the Ravens. If you
you're right,
you
we
mean
did,
the
we
Chiefs?
Yeah, the Chiefs, or pick your other.
The Ravens, we have 15-2.
Eagles.
The Bills.
Well, I guess you've already said you're low on the Eagles. When we get to like one of
the
those,
Bills have a chance to go 17-0. I think.
and not
They're the most
none
likely.
of us are going to pick
They're
them
the most
to go
likely for
17-0.
technical fouls.
But that'd be kind of funny. Sven, I will say I agree. You need more than one guy, but the Texans do have Danielle Hunter, who played very well last year. They
He's
get him
paid
back for
like
another
a big
year.
pass rusher too.
Yeah.
He's top 8.
So do not sleep on Danielle Hunter as far as
Danielle.
supporting Will Anderson goes. But yes, you do need multiple guys. I think they have multiple guys.
Danielle Hunter.
Danielle, thank you.
I'm really sad I just lost my baseball, but
He finished.
Right below you.
He finished tied for 9th. He had 12 sacks last year. So, yeah, do
Thank
not
you.
sleep on Danielle Hunter.
He
Apologies.
had 12 sacks?
according to PFF. So,
Oh, wow.
not
So
the
he's
half
better than
sack.
Will
He
Anderson.
participated.
Yeah.
Well, Will Anderson has
had
16 via PFF.
They don't do half sacks. If you participate in a sack, you get a sack.
PFF, man.
All right.